This week on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast, my husband Troy and I are discussing the top 5 money issues that can break a marriage. Today, we're talking about power dynamics in marriage when it comes to money and the problems that that can create. Now, I can think of a ton of scenarios that really highlight where the power imbalance can be an issue. Now, it's not a problem in and of itself, but depending on how the spouse who has more of the financial power in the relationship, sort of if they lord that over the other spouse, that's when that can become an issue. So examples are like, if one spouse controls all the money, maybe they make all the other financial decisions. The other spouse has no idea what's coming in, what's going out. But the spouse who controls the money abuses that power. So maybe they withhold money from the other spouse, put them on a very strict budget where they can spend whatever they want because they make all the money, but then the other spouse is basically given an allowance and that's it. I've actually seen that a little bit, thankfully not too often, but it's things like that that can lead to a lot of issues. You have other dynamics too, where maybe one spouse comes from a wealthy family, that family provides help with them, and the other spouse doesn't have any of that. One spouse makes all or most of the income. It's very common where one spouse is going to make the lion's share of the household income and be the breadwinner. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it all depends on what they do with that. Another one would be like one of the spouses comes into a marriage with really clean finances, and maybe they're all already on solid footing. Like maybe they already have a house, a well-paying job. And then the other spouse has like tons of student loans, a mountain of credit card debt. And then the other spouse can sometimes feel, well, that's not my debt because I didn't take on that $300,000 in debt, and then feel like they shouldn't have to help with repaying that. So again, I think these problems aren't always problems, but it can create an imbalance of power. And depending on how that's handled, especially by the spouse who has more power and how much that person wants to dictate the couple's financial decisions, it can really strain and break the marriage. So what do you think about that? Do you see that very often in people you interact with, the clients that you work with, where there's a power imbalance, but then the one of the spouses is sort of lording that over the other spouse?
So I have very rarely seen that. I'm very happy that that's the case because those generally aren't people that I want to deal with. What is actually interesting that I see, it's not all the time, but with far more frequency, is that there's a lot of clients where one of the spouses is the primary or even only income earner. And what I actually find a lot is that they are so busy doing their work and all the things that they have to do to make that money that the other spouse that, say, doesn't generate an income, they're really the big decision maker. And they can be running household finances, doing all those things. So it's a interesting dynamic, but it works really well, I think. There's just a mutual respect.
Yeah, I would agree. I can't really think of it with my clients. I think I've seen it more in subtle things, like subtle comments that people make, where they think that because they're the one who earns most or all of the income, that they get to make those decisions about where they live or, what kind of house they have or what kind of car they drive. And I guess that maybe more speaks to the fact that since you're not seeing that often, I'm assuming the clients you're working with are still married, not getting a divorce.
Yes, they're still married. There is a great mutual respect, which is critical foundation to a successful marriage. I mean, I think it really does. It is that simple. I mean,
right. And it's about mindset. Like if you have this idea or like, this is my money versus your money, and I make more or I have access to more, that's like violating the primary rule of marriage, which is like we're one now. We are one entity. It's not mine and yours, it's ours. And so I think that's kind of the fix, is it's really like a deep mindset issue.
Yeah. And I would say about the point you made earlier about, hey, maybe when a couple's getting married, someone's bringing student loan debt or say they've got some credit card debt or something. The successful ones that I always see are like, it's not that it's your problem now, it's our problem to deal with, and we're going to tackle it together.
Right. Yeah. And I think the communication and transparency about that before marriage and deciding how you're going to handle that. Thankfully, in our situation, we didn't have any of those issues. Like you and I, thankfully, both didn't have mountains of student debt. We both have very similar incomes for a very long time, especially at the beginning of our marriage. Our income was almost equal, like every year. And then if we ever got like help or gifts from family, it was sort of equal too. But I can definitely see how one spouse, especially if they're getting gifted or maybe treated from a wealthy family or giving income, and the other spouse doesn't really get to participate in that it could create some resentments or a feeling of like inequality in the marriage, which is obviously never good either.
Yeah. I think if you're not treating that stuff as a joint asset when received, there's going to be a lot of potential for issues.
Right. My money is your money, Troy.
Right. Likewise.
All right. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.